Hey everybody, how's it going? Today I'm going to be talking about the Queen of Pentacles, or the Queen of Coins. Um, there is this got me thinking about beauty. Here's the original card. Now this, original, the Marseille. A lot of people have this interpretation of this card. They interpret her looking in a mirror. That coin. What to me looks like a coin that she's holding. Nope, it's a mirror. And I certainly like many aspects of that idea. Coins, pentacles in the tarot are often described as representing things of value, things that are valuable in the earth, minerals, gold, and things that take effort to extract. And so the coins, the pentacles, like our money, is in a lot of ways worthless on its own. It represents some sort of work or effort that has been done, and then it also represents the amount of work or effort it could be traded for. But a lot of people, including myself, also extend the representation of what is valuable in the coins or pentacles to personal beauty, a person's body, and also a person's kind of social reputation, their social standing. So not as much to do with the relationships they're having themselves, which would be more in the sort of realm of the cups, but yeah, like a person's reputation. Anyway, so the idea that the Queen of Coins would be looking in a mirror, I think, is pretty fitting. Generally, I interpret the queens to be masters of the suit that they're a part of. So the Queen of Pentacles is like the most pentacle-y of the court cards, and this simultaneously gives this type of individual, this could be a man or a woman, but I think this archetype represents someone who is so good at managing an internal economy, let's say in the case of the coins, that they are essentially completely detached and removed from anything happening on the outside. And then with all the other suits, same thing. You're so adept and perfect at that, the purest, most distilled version of what the suit represents, that you're essentially completely cut off from entertaining any other type of ideas, any conflicting ideas, looking outside. And when it comes to the economy, that word, I think it's from Latin or Greek, one of those two, means like home balancing, homework. It's like it's home management, I think. Yeah, it's like the management of all the things that happen inside the home. The traditional economist was the woman of the house, and in the court cards, I guess this is kind of represented by the queen. Excuse me. And as the economist, I think it's very interesting to kind of contemplate on a type of housework where you don't go outside, right? Like, metaphorically speaking, because obviously homemakers, always went outside to some degree, but the the source of the resources are brought in from the outside by some risk-taking, person, and then they are just given to that internal economist, and then the internal economist manages, ideally perfectly manages those resources within the household amongst the family. But they don't go out themselves. It's a purely inwardly directed kind of management. So it could be it could be naive to how resources are acquired, how easy or difficult it is, but none of that stuff matters, because it's just the internal kind of worldview within the home that's important. And considering that as relating to money is one thing, but I think it's interesting to explore that idea in terms of how it reflects on the kind of pursuit of the internal household management of beauty. And beauty is such a tricky word to nail down in a way where everyone has the same understanding of it, right? I mean, I think people usually use the term with the sense that it's an objective descriptor, when in fact the very point of it is describing some sort of subjective experience. And so just to clarify, like, the idea of something being beautiful requires personal recognition of it surpassing all else, or being the pinnacle or the best, or just a really great way of something, a great being that is present in something. It very much, I think it's very much true that, like, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? I was reading something about Napoleon, about people are always like talking about Napoleon being short, and there are, it's so easy for a lot of people to make the joke whenever Napoleon comes up about all of his conquering being perfectly explained by the fact that he was short. So he had some sort of complex. He was making up for it. And it's funny because by today's standards, he would be considered short. But at the time that he was alive, he was actually considered to be, slightly on the tall side. He was taller than the average Frenchman. And it kind of, that reminded me of how much the subjective standards for things change. There's always, paintings and depictions of what was considered beautiful from different eras in the past. And often those depictions have very little to do with what we consider beautiful now. And it's like, often kids in museums and galleries that don't have a social filter, they'll be like, ew, this person's gross or something. And it's like, quiet Billy. But yes, they did, they did hold the different visual aesthetic in the highest of esteem. Nonetheless, beauty is, even though beauty is subjective, I think an objective definition of beauty could be the achievement of what is, collectively considered to be the very best in some category. One of the things that I really appreciate is beautiful mathematics, and specifically beautiful programming. I'm not that good of a programmer, but sometimes sometimes when I'm going over other people's code, I'll come across like one line of code and it'll seem kind of, it'll catch my eye, and I'll look at it, and you know, writing programs is often just this like step by step process. And so while one programmer could write, let's say, a little game, a little jumping guy or something, one programmer could write that in 1,000 lines of code, but another programmer could write it in 100 lines of code. And then there are people who will not only write it in 50 lines of code, but they'll make their code look like a picture that looks like the video game, or just some crazy like accomplishment. And this is very commonly described as beautiful code or beautiful math, or just something that is just something that arrives so cleanly and smoothly at the thing that is intended, right? And when people feel like they recognize beauty, I feel like that is an act of recognizing some cultural consensus. I don't think people really have I don't feel like people really have the ability to experience some individual experience that has never existed for anyone else ever before, and then have that experience of it being beautiful. I think they could be like wonderstruck or scared in kind of like a pleasant Zen way, but I think there's something about beauty that requires some consensus. And insofar as the Queen of Coins could be considerate of her own appearance, I think it's interesting to ask. Oneself, what is she basing her ideas of beauty on? Because there's this bad reputation that people get sometimes for being superficial, for being shallow, for being just surface dwelling, for not having any depth, right? Because they're just concerned with their looks. They're always looking in the mirror. And it often is the case that those people are shallow in the sense that they have no concerns at that point in time besides their outward appearance. But what I feel like gets asked very seldomly is, what is the basis for their, like, what creates their standard for what they consider to be beautiful? So they're looking in the mirror because they're trying to make sure that they look up to some standard that they believe in is beauty, right? But I feel like no one really asks where that standard comes from. And also, more importantly, I think it's rare to find people focusing on or asking, how often does that person that's staring at the mirror go to shop around, metaphorically speaking, for what is beautiful? Because there are some people that have not arrived at some stable idea of what's beautiful, and they keep chasing, magazine articles, movies, like the way movie stars look in movies. They're always looking out into the world, looking for any authority figures that will tell them this is the hot new trend, this is the beautiful thing. And then they try and make themselves look like that thing, and they keep checking the mirror to make sure that their makeup looks the way it does, that they're making the expression on their face of whatever is considered to be the desirable and beautiful expression, like, pouty lips, often, I think, referred to as like duck face or something. It's like, it's not like that, like that's a relatively new thing, like speaking, historically of culture. But yeah, I think the interesting direction to look at when dealing with these types of individuals is how often are they venturing out to try and figure out what is beautiful? How desperately do they rely on others and not, like when I said that beauty was this byproduct of consensus, these types of people that I'm describing, it's almost like they are either incapable or too lazy or disinterested to perform their own analysis of what their society finds beautiful and what their society finds repulsive, and they just look for those authority figures that will tell them, like, this is what society thinks is beautiful. Because there's a difference, right, between looking around and asking yourself, like, what's the good thing, what's the bad thing, as opposed to not doing that work yourself and just which expert is going to be able to tell me what the good thing and what the bad thing is. Anyways, considering what could potentially be the archetype of the Queen of Coins, the Queen of Pentacles, I was kind of considering the thought experiment of, the idea that this type of person, that the penultimate archetype of the Queen of Coins has never left the house, again, like metaphorically speaking. So her entire world is the world within the house. It's only the family, the house management, all the things that are, all the necessities that this person is responsible for in some internal sphere. And no outside opinions or ideas or judgments matter or are relevant, because this person just isn't open to them in the first place. And so when this person looks in the mirror, what they're checking for is they're checking to see whether they live up to the singular timeless standard that they have for themselves. And I think that, and again, this is like the archetypal extreme, but I think that is a pretty impressive thing to contemplate. Imagine a person that since, as far back as they could remember, always had an idea of what the ideal that they are to strive for is, and that has never changed. And when they keep checking themselves in the mirror, they're just checking it to make sure they're still following the aims of that virtue or that ideal, right? And yeah, and some individuals are like this, although I'm sure it's very, very rare. And also some individuals are the exact inversion, where they just exclusively look to others and to the exterior to determine what that is, and constantly change their opinion about what is and isn't desirable. I think most people are kind of in the middle, but nonetheless, this is a manager of an internal economy of some sort, whether it's money or personal beauty. And I think when dealing with these types of individuals, I think that it's very likely that if they're the kind of people who look to the external for validation or guidance on their values related to, let's say, personal appearance, there's, I think, a really good chance that they're also going to be the kind of people who seek out the same authority for matters regarding money management or matters regarding relationships or whatever. Like these are individuals that are not going to be making up their own mind about something as a calculated analysis of the world they see around them. So I think that's potentially a useful thing to consider when dealing with these types of you know, what could be like extreme micromanagers, let's say, you know, is to try and figure out where the source that they're going to for figuring out what is of value and what is not of value is. And then that should certainly make it easier to interact with them, maybe predict them. Who knows? I'm going to wrap things up here. Hope you enjoyed the video. Drop me a like if you did. Feel free to comment free reading to be entered into the weekly draw for a free one-on-one reading. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care.